Hi, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone has had a good time this morning. I know I have a lot of really interesting talks already. As introduced, my name is Jennifer Pham, and I'm the Regional Advisor on Sustainable Value Chains at the Danish Embassy here in Vietnam. It's my pleasure today to be your moderator for this panel on climate, circularity, and socially inclusive supply chains. Now, to intro this panel, this is not going to be a panel where we talk about why sustainability matters, because we've had a lot of really good talks about that both today and yesterday. And it's also, I expect, why we're all gathered here is because we know the answer to that question. Instead, we're going to we're going to talk about how companies and investors are increasingly having to make decisions in a landscape that's perhaps becoming more complex. On one hand, we want to do the right thing by our companies, by our investors, by our employees and customers, but we're also having to work with partners and suppliers for whom doing the right thing may not be as easy or as compelling, so to say. So I'm very happy that we have a very diverse panel today who can sort of shed perspectives or insights on each part of the supply chain. And I'd like to start by asking you all to introduce yourselves. But instead of the general introduction of your name and title, can you also add an example of a trade-off that you're maybe currently navigating, wherein you're maybe having to balance between your values and hard reality? And we'll start here, I think.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Anastasia, representing H&M today. So a trade-off for us would be supplier transformation. So in our case, if we want our suppliers to replace thermal processes or have net zero facilities, then we have to have in place a supplier collaboration model, which means we need to provide resources or in some cases finances for them to catalyze that change because, of course, they might not have the resources to do so. So it does put us in a position where we need to question and ask ourselves, are we doing this for ambition or are we doing this for impact? Whilst trying to be profitable as well as remain competitive within the industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, and good morning, everyone. It's my great pleasure to meet you all in this conference. So my name is Thảo, Nguyễn. I'm from Gemadept Corporation, and as you may know, we are one of the leading corporations in Vietnam in port and logistics industries. Regarding Jennifer's question, one of the typical trade-offs that we have addressed so far is how to balance between our carbon emission reduction targets with the cost and with the operation investment cost, you see. So we clearly understand that transitioning to become greener is very important. However, the investment in the technologies and equipment may increase. Yeah, so that's why we have to approach the innovative, some innovations and collaboration with our partners, as well as gradually integrate the ESG goals into our business development strategy. So thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Yến. I represent Avishka Capital today. Avishka, we are one of the first impact investing funds in the world, founded and now headquartered in Mumbai, India. Out of the panelists today, I represent the voice of the SMEs. As you can see here, the three panelists on my right side are representing like corporates. For us, we invest into SMEs with the revenue size ranging from 10 to 20 million US. And what we want to do with our investment thesis is to bring the capital to these SMEs in the global supply chain so that they can have the capital for growth and at the same time give them the incentive to implement more ESG. And through that, we make the supply chain greener. So Avishka is quite new to the region. We have been around in India and Africa for a long time, but for Southeast Asia, this is the first fund that Avishka is entering Southeast Asia. We have not had any investment in Vietnam yet, but that's why I'm here today, like wanting to share with you more about our investment strategy. And the trade-off that Avishka is facing regarding this topic is definitely whether we can find companies in Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, or other emerging Southeast Asian market that have started practicing ESG already, so that they can meet our requirements. But at the same time, in this global headwind, right, there's a lot of challenges to their business. Then would they be able to to still keep that commitment to ESG, and would we be able to find the investment opportunities? That's the trade-off that those businesses have. But as a fund, we think that the global headwind right now is a short-term or mid-term headwind, and we are here in the region for a long-term perspective. So we believe that we can help our portfolio companies emerge from this challenge and be able to be greener in their supply chain.
I'm Alexander. I'm with Fairware Foundation. Daniel kindly mentioned us this morning. We are a multi-stakeholder organization in the garment sector, important sector for Vietnam, and we have around 130 garment brands, and we work with their factories and their main offices. Our main office is in Amsterdam. We have, in 10 production countries, we have teams, including Vietnam already for quite a long time. In terms of trade-offs, I think actually there are a lot of false trade-offs in the ESG world. And one of them is between ESG and bottom line. And I think, especially for a Belgian, I think Bruno made a very good point, that these things can go hand in hand, right? And I'd like to add two arguments to his already really, really strong promotion of that concept. First, the EU-Vietnam FTA, Free Trade Agreement, mentioned already this morning, is very strong on social and on environmental commitments. So there is a business interest on the long term to work on this. And the other thing I want to mention is that in our sector at least, moving up to the higher margin business, which is really important for Vietnam, also comes with a stronger commitment to social, because you need to retain your workers, you need to upskill them to be able to take that higher margin business. The other false trade-off that I think exists is between environmental and social. And I'm very happy that you said that we're going to start working on connecting those two. And we do that in this panel, I'm sure. Where they connect, well, they intrinsically connect, we'll talk about that, but there's also one thing I want to highlight specifically, it's human rights and environmental due diligence. Due diligence comes from the finance world, I think, but it's now very much in the ESG, in the CSR sphere. It is, I'm strongly convinced, the new language, the new approach, and that's there to stay for CSR and for ESG. So let's work on human rights and environmental due diligence.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you, really, for your introductions. Alexander, I'm glad you brought up due diligence, because that's actually going to be something we'll address now in the first question. I'll address it explicitly to Stacy, Bruno, and Thảo, but obviously if anyone else wants to join in, then please feel free to do so. I want to talk specifically about strategy under pressure. So you brought up due diligence laws, but what we're seeing right now is unfortunately that a lot of the environmental and human rights due diligence laws in Europe, for example, which had sort of been leading the way for the past few years, they're kind of being watered down a little bit. And the political momentum in certain key markets is also shifting away from sustainability at this time. So I want to understand from the perspective of your organizations, and perhaps those of your suppliers, if you're representing SMEs, how are there any examples of you having to adapt your ESG strategy at this time? How are you going about those decisions, or are you simply doubling down on what you know to be the right thing?
I'll go first, I guess. For us, I'll start with the doubling down. We're doubling down on the compliance, on the traceability, and most importantly, securing quality data. In terms of adapting, we work in a shared space. So it means that we have to collaborate more if we actually want to reflect all the upcoming changes. But I think it's important to remember that in the space that we work in, we need to shift from this policing model to a more proactive improvement model, and that we need to focus on the empowerment and not the enforcement if we want to do it right? And if we want to do it well from that sense. So then I'll pass the baton on.
Okay, maybe I have the next one. So it may take a long time to explain all of these things, but I just stick on the key points to share with you that I've chosen to share with you here. So first is what are we doubling down? Because we are operating in port and logistics, so what are we doubling down right now? So firstly, I have to say that operational efficiency and resource optimization, however, the world is fluctuating and the headwinds that we are facing. So operational efficiency and resource optimization, we are optimizing and keep on optimizing our resource consumption. I can share with you examples like electricity consumption for the key cranes, for all of the port facilities, our vehicles. So we have shifted from using diesel oil to electricity. And if you may have time, I would like to invite you to visit one of our deep sea ports in Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu. Someday when you go to Vũng Tàu Beach, I may invite you there. It is called, Resort on the Sea. Resort on the Sea not because of its appearance, but it's a true green port. All of the key cranes handling the super mother vessels, the biggest size, the smartest version in the world right now being handled by electricity equipment. And the later version, we are planning for that renewable energy consumption. And we save a lot of cost also thanks to that. As Bruno explained, it helped us. It is profitable, yeah. You see, for the terminal, the air cargo terminal, or our warehouses, we use the rooftop solar power. And the rooftop solar power saves us a lot of money every year. I don't remember exact number, but it replaces about 30 to 40% of the electricity consumption of these sites, although the huge consumption of energy. The second, we apply the smart port application technology to save the time, to save the cost for our clients, our partners, and to increase our competitiveness. And you also may heard about the inland waterway transport, especially in the south of Vietnam with a lot of rivers. So inland waterway transport help us to reduce the logistics costs. Meanwhile, it helps us to reduce the carbon emission significantly. So those are the initiatives in the resource, the resource consumption optimization being done by GEMADAPT. And the second is the risk management and resilience. Of course, as Bruno introduced to you that Vietnam is one of the top countries in the world being affected by the climate change. And all of the turbulence, all of the storms, heavy rains are affecting our port facilities. So in our investment, despite all of the fluctuations of the world, despite all of the new regulations, we have to target at resilient and sustainable infrastructure investment. So that is a must. And another thing is that stakeholder engagement and transparency is also important. We are doubling down on that. Stakeholder engagement and transparency. We are not alone in this journey. We have our partners, our investors, our shareholders, our customers. So together we can do it better. So we do the carbon emission inventory and reporting every year. You can trace the numbers of the carbon emission at our ports, each of our port, annually on our sustainability report. And it is even audited by the third international organization, that is BSI, British Standard Institute. They do the audit for all of our sustainable reports. So we try to have higher commitment and transparency to all stakeholders so that we understand each other and we can come along together in this difficult and challenging journey. Yes, thank you.
I'll be brief. So if you want to visit us, we're at the end of the world, just before the sea in the north of Vietnam. You go to the right and then you're in deep sea. And just like Gem and Depth, you can come and have a look, and then you understand what it means to double down. I actually believe there's no need for doubling down, because we've been doubling down for the past 7 years already. And I believe that any company, to come back to your question, that is today reconsidering, in my view, that is a company that had perhaps an interest in being sustainable, but for sure it was not profitable what they were doing. And in times of turmoil, it's the first that gets cut. The consultants perhaps before that, and then after that, anything that doesn't make a profit. So if it makes a profit, if it's core to your company, it will not change a thing. And I need to tell you that for my job, because actually I also have a job, I work, I talk to many companies because we attract companies to Vietnam. And as it happens, I've managed to become the chairman of Eurocham, and I talk to even more companies. I have not yet found one CEO or GD or MD of a company that has told me, there's an orange man at the other side of the sea, and I'm going to check out sustainability. However, I met quite a few that says, I'm not going to talk about it anymore. So perhaps it's not fancy. Perhaps it's not flavor of the day anymore. But it doesn't matter. Because if it has a purpose, if it brings you a return, you should continue doing it.
Thank you. Alexander, Ian, can I maybe draw you into this discussion as well? I'm very curious because obviously these three lead large companies with, relatively a lot of influence. But I know that you guys have to, you have to work directly with investors, manage their interests, and for Fairware, you work with a lot of companies whose interests you are sort of acting upon. So is this your experience as well, that there is not a lot of wavering in the commitment to ESG, or do you find it to be different?
Yeah, I can go first. So for us, since we work with SMEs, I would say the commitment to ESG is already low. So the wavering is actually there because as an investor, we actually have to make the case for them why ESG is important and why it is a long-term investment for the business. As you understand, like most of the manufacturers in Vietnam, right? Because we focus, right now our position is still lower in the value chain. The businesses or our manufacturers here usually have typically thin margins and long cash flow cycle. So for them, like they don't have the habit of invest and keep the retained earnings to invest in the future unless it's the business expansion. They need to buy new machinery or develop a new market. So ESG is not nature for them yet. But I would say because of Vietnam's commitment to the net zero target by 2050 and also the unconditional commitment by 2030, I think the laws will change, and that will be the push for the SME to increase their participation. Because right now, I still can see the quite weak linkage between what they understand as their responsibility and also what Vietnam as a country need to deliver in terms of our ESG or GSG commitment. That being said, so for my recent talk with the SME out there, right now, given the tariff headwinds, right, some of the things I heard is, they understand there's the need to diversify the trading partners. As the U.S., still being the key trading partner for Vietnam and their key clients. So now they need to diversify their client base. But there's a lot of concern in them that they may not meet the requirements to export more to the EU in terms of the quality and the environmental commitments. But I think having partners like ourselves who have helped SMEs in other markets to implement ESG and also understand their pain points, to work with them and develop like an action plan for them to gradually comply, will help their process smoother and easier. So that's from my experience.
Thanks. Yeah, we also work with a lot of SMEs, actually. The CSDDD that was mentioned, the Corporate Social Sustainability Directive in the EU, and all the other laws that are basically working from a due diligence point of view, maybe they're watered down a bit, maybe they're delayed a bit, sure, but they're there to stay. I think Thailand is coming with the due diligence law. There are lots of things going on. That's the direction, and it doesn't only apply to big companies. In fact, in our sector, there are not many big companies. I mean, H&M is pretty big, but looking at other sectors, it's not even that big. And so many, the vast majority is SMEs in a global perspective. But they still will have to get their act together as well. And our members show that that's really possible too. It's not that more difficult for an SME, actually, if you put your mind to it. It depends on how your supply chain is organized. But you need to do it because, for example, Zalando joined FAIRA recently. Zalando is the number one retail platform in Europe. They have about, 6,000, 7,000 brands on their platform. They're going to be asking questions. They're already asking questions, but they're going to be asking due diligence questions to all of those brands. Small, big, doesn't matter. So you need to know your supply chain. You need to do your due diligence, whether you're big or small. Investors are going to ask you the same things, So, it's here to stay.
If I may, that hit something that I should share. The most asked question by an investor, small or big, in Vietnam today is, what are you doing in terms of sustainability? 5 years ago, the most asked question was, why should I come to Vietnam? So that hasn't gone away. And I believe that is the best example that you can take home, whether it has left the building or not.
That's a very positive message. Thanks for sharing it. I want to move on to another question that you touched on a little bit in your intro, Alexander. And it's about this bridging between the environmental policies and then social inclusion. I think for many companies, it tends to be two different checklists. Where one sometimes can seem a little bit easier to address because it's about, measuring some things and then installing some solar panels on the roof. And then the other one can be a little bit more fuzzy to some. So I'd love to hear some examples, maybe starting with you and moving to Stacey, and obviously anyone else can join in as well, about any examples where the environmental and social strategies actually reinforce each other as opposed to trading off.
Sure. So the CSDDD directive, just going to focus on that again, it's like Bruno said, laws are not always clear, not even in Europe. Very much not in Europe also. So they need to be translated to the practice of business and of the realities on the ground. Actually, in the garment sector, we've done that very, very well compared to most other sectors. So I would urge anyone working with other sectors to really look at what you can do to make due diligence work for stakeholders and for business. Because other sectors, with a few exceptions, are very, very much behind. And you should wake up, because it's getting very late in the day. And doing due diligence is not easy. So, for example, and that's getting to your question, one of the things that you have to do under the new law is meaningful stakeholder engagement. But the law doesn't say what meaningful is, doesn't define what a stakeholder is, and doesn't say what engagement is. So what we're doing in our sector, but that's just in our sector, because we're the authority on human rights due diligence in our sector, in all modesty, is defining with all stakeholders what that means, meaningful stakeholder engagement. And actually, we've piloted it already. We don't want to talk about it too much because it's really an experiment, but with H&M and other brands, we've worked in the south of India to see what this looks like, bringing both the environmental stakeholders and the social stakeholders together. And one example why that's important is because, for example, heat. I need to look up this number. $85 billion in labor productivity is going to be lost in Vietnam alone by 2030, according to the IPCC. Developing solutions for that heat problem is best done with the people suffering from that heat, the workers. Because you might come in and think, well, let's put in air conditioning. But actually the solution might be in more bathroom breaks or some rest breaks or maybe some more drinking breaks. And then workers are happier and you have less of a carbon footprint and it maybe even costs less.
Just to add on to that, I think this space is super fascinating. The nexus between social and environment, it's good to see that the conversation on this is now being highlighted more so than ever. However, many companies, including ours, still work in these silos of having social goals, having environmental goals, having governance goals. There's no reason why you can't integrate some of these goals together. That being said, I think if you want to start working in this with this lens on, you need to take a holistic approach. One. And second, you need to remember that that dialogue, is a business driver. Engaging your workers is a business driver. We have to also remember that workers are not just beneficiaries within our factories, they're critical enablers. There is opportunities to utilize them more in how you come up with your climate resilient plans and in terms of how you come up with worker transition plans. So, for example, if we're looking at practical examples here, you can pair your decarbonization efforts with worker transition plans. That addresses what Alexander is speaking about in terms of heat stress. You can also look at shared risk mapping. I think this kind of working needs to happen more, and it needs to happen now. It's not the let's have a goal under social, let's have a goal under environment and treat them separately or have indirect benefits, right? It's looking at it together holistically. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the panel? Otherwise, I'll move on.
If I may, I believe strongly that people make a difference. It's one of the taglines of our company. And I want to share with you that since this year, we changed something. So anybody in a company has a budget, right? We do budget rounds. We give budgets to achieve goals. And that can be highly motivating, but also highly depressing. And we decided that we should give people also another budget. And what we have done is now that every department, even the cleaning department, has a carbon credit budget. So we actually made for the first time ever, for the whole company, for every department, a prediction of how much carbon we're going to generate. And actually, those teams that can be better than their budget, like at the commercial or the financial side, if you beat it, you get a bonus. Well, in our company, you get a bonus if you beat your carbon predictions. And strangely enough, despite that it's actually, for example, a guy that is cutting the grass, quite difficult to grasp that, by step, teaching people about our planet, by teaching them about how you can make tiny differences, it actually gives you a huge return. And that, I believe, is how you can include your own people as a driver for change.
Amazing. Amazing. I want to dive a little bit further into this idea of sharing the burden and sharing accountability as opposed to shifting it along the supply chain, as some of the instruments like due diligence laws and ESG scoring and financing conditions often do. So I want to hear maybe from all of you, and I think we have time to do all of you. I want to hear your thoughts on how to design a productive ESG partnership, right? So for you, Stacey, you mentioned in your intro this idea of empowering your suppliers as opposed to simply, what was the word you used? Enforcing, yeah. And Bruno, I think in your presentation, you gave this really interesting example of offering the companies you work with a free energy assessment in return for them actually acting on it. So I want to hear a little bit more about these examples, and obviously examples from the rest of the panel as well.
I go first. Okay, why would I offer free energy audits? Because I need to tell you the truth, we're also dark. We distribute also energy. So actually, by offering an energy audit, my electricity company sells less. Quite the conundrum. So why would I do that? So if you ensure that the operational cost of a company goes down, that makes for a very happy company. It's the same budget that comes back. So we score bonus points. It's how also you can stay happily married, by scoring bonus points. And they can say to their shareholders, look how well we're doing, we're saving energy. And of course it's thanks to us, because they didn't do anything, we did the work. And I score very bad points because I sell less electricity. But I don't care, because we're the most expensive electricity company in Vietnam. But in return, my connection cost is higher and my management cost is higher. But in return, what I offer to everyone when they complain about, yes, do you know that electricity should not be this expensive? I can show what you get for that in return. And that's, I believe, how you should look at it. And if you team up, if you partner up, and you can make sure that 1 + 1 is 3, it's a winner, right?
May I build on that? Because I think what you're saying is short-term versus long-term also, right? So in the short term, you lose some of your energy turnover, but in the long term, you keep happy customers or you stay married. So, and what you do together, you do better, right? I like that slogan. It's the same with buyer-supplier relationships in our sector. Many of them have been, I don't know, the word enforcing is an interesting one. I'd like to hear from you more about that. But what we see is it's a lot of transactional relationships. And they need to be more equitable, more long-term. And due diligence will help you because on both sides, people are more dependent on each other. So the buyer will be more dependent on the suppliers to do the good due diligence because the buyers are responsible for due diligence. Huh? The European companies, they're liable under this new law, but they need their suppliers in Vietnam or in the other production countries to do this. So that's one good thing. The other way around, the long-term relationship is what the supplier also needs to be able to invest. We actually even have an impact investment fund that is called the Good Fashion Fund. They now only want to invest in the factories working for Fairware members because they know that those members are going to stay for a long time. So that reduces their risk. It's an interesting concept. So anyway, long-term versus short-term, equitable versus transactional. I think those are the ingredients to the question you're asking.
Yeah, just to clarify a little bit from my end. When I say enforcement, of course, I'm not saying I'm beating them with a stick. I'm sort of asking them.
Enforcer.
But I think, you know, in H&M, we used to have this phrase a lot, carrot and stick approach. We don't necessarily have that carrot and stick approach anymore because it's not about incentivizing for them to do something. You want them to do it because you want them to see the benefit, and it should be integral to the partnership that you have. These are suppliers that we have to work with, or we want to work with, for the next 20 years or more. It's not a short-term relationship. So we also have to take a step back and sort of say to ourselves, if we, want to we have to do multiple things. We want to produce a garment at a certain cost, within a certain cost range, but we have all these sustainability commitments. So it's a balance, right, of being realistic and practical. And that means, what is our role? Our role is not enforcer anymore or asking them to do something. Our role is making sure they have access to the capacity, to the information, to the support, technical advice, etc. And that requires partnerships with other key stakeholders and experts within our space. We've come to the realization that we can't do it alone anymore. We have transitioned how we work in sustainability from being the first mover in our industry about 10 years ago to now saying, okay, let's work smarter, not harder in this space. And so that's what I mean by moving towards empowerment. Yeah.
Thank you. Chị Thảo, Ian?
Yes, very interesting sharing. Yes, thank you. So I just would like to share, because we are not only the buyer, we are also the supplier to our shipping lines. And recently myself, as I'm in charge of the ESG committee of the company. So recently myself have joined in the, internally we call it the ESG bidding with shipping lines. Before, you know that every year or every 2 years, they will renew their contract using our port services. So before they renew the commercial terms, they came to meet us for the ESG bidding. They trace and ask us a lot of questions with our data and our numbers and all of the declaration concerning our sustainable development and action plans have been done this year and next year. And the coming year, they will come again and ask us, what have you done last year? And what is your plan for next year? So they have the data and comparison. So that's interesting. And it's also the motivation for us to do it better. And with our suppliers, the most important thing that we communicate with them. That way, the way that shipping lines have done with us. So we do the same with our suppliers. We communicate with them, so that we can share the common vision in terms of sustainable development. The benefits, all of the benefits and the profitability that we together can achieve if we realize those concrete goals. And we support them in terms of technology and even the financial support. Maybe not direct financial support from the company, but from indirect perspective. Like you see that recently we secure the green funding sustainability linked loans from HSBC. And recently we have the financial strategic partnership with BIDV. And green credits and sustainability linked loans are among the we call it the products that both sides are studying right now. So we receive the financial support in our sustainable development, and we share one of the conditions that GMADEP raised for the banks is to provide financial support for our suppliers, our customers, our partners as well. So that we can together achieve the benefits. So those are the ways. And we communicate and we share the information with our suppliers so that we can know the goals and set the goals and the action plans together. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
So for us as an investor, I think we, like everyone else here, we have both the carrot and the stick mechanism. So for the carrot, for companies who wish approach our funding, they would need to meet requirements, right? And one of our requirements is the ESG, basically an ESG due diligence. But in order for us to motivate them, we have set aside like a technical assistance facility to give the company grant money so that they can implement some of their ESG initiatives. So that could be hiring a consultant to build out the action plan and designing the goals for them to meet, or whether it's getting a certification that they need in order to increase their market access. So that TA facility is an important carrot for us. I think another carrot is for us to tie the incentive into the pricing. So if the company meets the ESG goal that we set for them, it means that the business is less susceptible to longer term risks. Then we can reduce our pricing over time. And the third one is a stick where we put all of the compliance in terms of ESG that they need to meet into a CP or condition precedent for them to meet by the time that we disperse the money, or conditions subsequent for them to meet. And if they don't meet, then they would violate our agreements. So those are the mechanisms that we use to build in the motivation for our SME clients.
I think we have just about enough time left to wrap up, unfortunately. Time goes fast. But I want to end on this note of sustainability and due diligence being about risk management, right? Of course, that's true. But at the same time, just like Vietnam is taking huge risks right now and being bold, changing up a lot of things, it's also a time for companies to step forward and be very bold in their sustainability strategies now. So I'd love to hear from you. What is a risk that your organizations are currently taking? Or if you want to talk about a past choice, then what did you learn from it? And we'll start from that end, I think.
Thanks. Well, so actually, I'm, what is it again? Director of External Affairs for FAIRA right now. But until April 1st, that was my liberation day, I was the executive director for 7 years. And I thought after 7 years, I don't think any organization should tolerate one director for more than 7 years. Or could be 6, could be 8. I mean, that's the difference with marriage, I think. But that's just a personal opinion. I don't do anything with that. But it depends also on what kind of manager you are. Anyway, I handed it over to my number 2, who's now my boss. She's doing an excellent job, Annabelle. So I think the biggest risk I took was to go all out for due diligence as the organizing principle, way before CSDDD or even the German supply chain law. It cost a lot of investment, upskilling on our side, but I think it was, in retrospect, it was a good choice. I'm only talking about the risks I took that paid off. So this one paid off. Also for our 130 members, for their factories, but the job has just begun. So we have an academy, a due diligence academy that all of the fashion brands in the world can use. We have a lot of programs for the VITAS and the VCCI members in Vietnam to empower them, the factories, to understand due diligence, to be a more strong supplier to their customers and even get new customers, especially now with the Orange Man? Is that what you call it? So yeah, I think that's probably the risk, the most risky one, or at least the one I'm willing to share.
Yeah, so for us, so my history with Avishka is still a bit short. Wouldn't have too much of the past to share. But for Avishka, I think, and now I'm speaking for us. So this risk of establishing this eighth fund to focus on the global supply chain with the mission to make it greener and approach it with different asset class. So the first 7 funds of Avishka mainly have done like equity into private equity and venture capital approach. And this is the 8th fund and the first fund that we use the structured credit approach because we think it's a more suitable structure to work with these businesses in the supply chain. So that's the risk that we take in order to fulfill the mission that we could make the supply chain greener. And let's see in 5-7 years whether this risk is a profitable one or not. But it's one of my responsibilities to deliver that as well.
Yes, so in our perspective, you see that because we are operating in port and logistics with a lot of infrastructure investment if we want to to achieve sustainable goals. So with those huge investments, of course, it raises certain and big risks also because those are the new technologies. The reliability haven't been fully proven yet. Yeah, and the operational cost as well as the technology is still relatively new to our employees. So certain difficulties and risk. So the risk can be in terms of financial issues, can be in terms of operational issues, technological issues, and even the stakeholder skepticism. Sometimes the stakeholders will ask us the reason why you have those high investment costs for such equipment and facilities. So we need to do the FS very carefully. We need to prove with them the effectiveness of our investment. So stakeholder involvement and stakeholder accompanying with us is also very important. But those are the downsides. If we can overcome all of the downsides, then when we can achieve a lot of values. Yeah, as you already know, in terms of pioneering advantage. Because sooner or later, it's just the matter of time. If we are the pioneer, it is our competitiveness in the market. If we are late, then it will be a great burden on our shoulder. Yeah, but we have to do. Yes, and using innovation and learning. When we do something better, we learn a lot, right? Together with our partners. And long-term cost savings, as I share with you, cost saving right now, when we save the energy consumption, and a lot more. And cost saving in the long term. Reduce environmental impact, of course. But the key words in implementing all of these, the key words I just would like to note down, very simple, but not easy. Thorough planning, careful execution, continuous monitoring, and adaptation. So those are the key words. Yes, thank you.
Okay, note to all. If my boss would be Dutch, I would also not want him to stay longer than 7 years. Having said that, I'm about to finish my 7th year at Deep Sea. Let me check what my title is. CEO. So next time I will be somebody else. No doubt. I have to admit I've taken quite a bit of risk. But the biggest risk I've taken is 7 years ago when I decided to take this job and to rewrite our story with our people. And I ran in head first straight into a wall, which I will call skeptical stakeholders is not the word, but suspicious shareholders. My shareholders are Belgian and they're bankers. So nice people, bankers. And they do want return. So my risk was 7 years ago when I did a bit of a study round, I said, I don't think we're going anywhere. We need to change. And I raised the cost of goods sold by more than 15%. And that was a problem, because it is 15% that you need to get back from your customer. So I raised the prices by 25%, which is a good idea if you can sell. And that risk took me at least 6 months to get it past my skeptical shareholders. But in the end, they allow me to go down head first if I would have not taken off. The result is I'm sitting here today, and hopefully all of you know deep sea. 7 years ago, nobody did. And that is risk. But was it a manageable risk? Because that's what we should talk about. Yes, because if the product is worth more, you only need to find the right customer for it. And that, I think, is what we should be talking about. If you want to become resilient, you need to make sure that you deliver something that is wanted. But you can make that happen yourself.
Okay, lucky last. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard about Syra, the new polyester facility that's going to be built in Vietnam with a huge investment. No? Okay, so Syra is this huge facility. H&M and Vargas Group have co-founded this facility. They are going to invest about $1 billion into Vietnam, which is huge. It's the biggest Swedish investment to date. That's not the risk I'm going to talk about. That's a good thing for us. But connected to that, a risk that we're actively working on is trying to import textile waste, which is obviously a big sort of risk area, but a very touchy subject at the same time. But if we're going to truly build this circularity hub in Vietnam that can be better and more competitive than India, let's say, then we need to have good partnerships on the ground. We need to engage constructively. And it's a very fine balance of how we go about doing that, how we get to convince the government with a very robust plan in place of how we safeguard doing something like that. So that's a current risk area that we're navigating at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all of the panelists for your insight, your honesty, and your willingness to challenge assumptions. Thank you also to the audience for your attention. I think today some of the topics that we have touched upon is the importance of bold action at this time, because even though we might need to talk about it less, even if it might not be a headline at as many conferences, sustainability and particularly environmental and human rights due diligence is here to stay. So to commit to that kind of bold action, it's important that we work together with our partners, with our suppliers, in a way that's not just focused on compliance and reporting and enforcement, but in which we empower each other to do better as well. And we have to reject these premises that there's necessarily a trade-off between sustainability and profit, or environmental and social. So thank you so much for today, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.